Hey, what up, YouTube? Thanks again all for joining me. You see, I'm going to skip the whole romance on this one because this is quite a serious topic. And in terms of certified ethical hackers, penetration testers, cybersecurity professionals, okay, and in businesses in general, there's a huge, should we say, lack of knowledge in a particular field. And that comes down to psychology. More specifically, it comes down to almost a branch of psychiatry, and definitely falls within the realms of forensic psychology. And this isn't covered, at least in terms of what I do, virtually anywhere. That's what we're going to be looking at. Let's pause out and get to it. You see, in all of this, okay, in fact, let me get one of these on the go. All right. But just before we do, when it comes to sort of business management, business analysis, and when it comes to the whole cybersecurity industry, we tend to focus on the external parts of these systems, which isn't looking inwards at where other problems lay. Let's focus on the whole cybersecurity thing, shall we? And more specifically about probably the most relevant sort of computer we have. And that's this. Specifically, what's in that? Okay. Just sculling around. You see, what concerns me massively, and this is something that I've known about over, say, last 20 years, is that we can explain a lot of things externally, right? Like external hacking, external exploits. That's all cool, and we can even explain a lot of the internal stuff, huh? Like data leaks. And these happen a lot more than what they should. You best believe it. But what we're not going into is the mentality behind it, and it definitely should be covered. The stupid irony in this industry is we hear of terms like social engineering, and we hear of terms like Trojan horses. But that's only a machine element. But to a point, it doesn't cover the psychological element of people who perpetrate these things. Allow me to explain. Allow me that just a moment. Let's take the hacker playbook as an example. But we will go further than this. And I am literally going to put my money where my mouth is. And I'm going to open this here. We have something called social engineering, right? But when you look through all of these pages, you look at this. It's all to do, certainly, with scripts and machine code, applications, emails and stuff like that. But it doesn't cover the mind. Right? What it doesn't cover is the people behind that. You see, the thing is, data breaches happen a lot more than, well, what should be happening. And they happen a lot more than what you think. And it doesn't just have to be an external threat actor that does it. It can very much, and is very much, internal. Even more ironically, you hear the term Trojan horse, right? I'm not going to go into that here, but you've heard of the whole mythology thing about the whole wooden horse. Again, I don't need to cover that. There's plenty of stuff you can learn on this. But the problem is, it doesn't cover the infected human. The poisoned human brain that has an illness. Now again, there are elements of science that do cover this. Yes, you've got the DSM-4, and I think the DSM-5 is being written. But this is specifically with psychiatry, psychology, and mental illness. Right? Cool. Well, you've got forensic psychology and forensic psychiatry. Cool. But what is there for businesses? What is there for corporates? Where do you go with that? This is the interesting point now. There isn't. Okay? So picture this. Right? You've got toxic employees that may have any of the, well, one of the three traits. Narcissism, sociopathy, and psychopathy. These are not all the same things. Some are interchangeable, some are not. But they pose a significant risk, nonetheless, and that's something that I'm going to touch upon here. Now, it's also worth noting another thing. My knowledge within IT goes back over 20 years. Right? And what we're discussing here hasn't been covered in any formal aspect. So nothing from the BTEC, National Diploma in Information Technology for Practitioners, or the BTEC NDITP. It isn't covered in the CISSP, and it isn't covered in the CEH. And in fact, even in the example of the Hacker Playbook, this element of social engineering isn't touched upon. All right. Business management doesn't really cover this. Systems analysis doesn't cover it. Business analysts don't really cover it. So now you start to see something very disturbing happening here. All right? And it comes down to essentially toxic individuals. And this is the problem. And in regards also to pen testing, a lot of it is done from certainly looking externally. A great deal of this doesn't focus on things internally. And that's an interesting trait because humans like to externalize things. Okay, they don't like to internalize it. But you even look at a lot of the major data breaches that have happened. that come internally. I think it's now high time that we start looking at this. And this is like never seen before anywhere else, because now I'm not only raising the flag and the alarms on this, but I'm discussing it. And it's never been done, as far as I know, to this level anywhere before. Not anywhere. As I said, it's not covered in any formal courses, unless, of course, you go down the medical route, or certainly the forensic route, which is separate branches of sciences. The problem is, having not done so, when the problems do occur, well, then they're spectacular, aren't they? It's worth noting on this one, now is a good time to go hitting that bell and getting that subscrizzle button pressed. They're right down there. Also, in the links is a Patreon page. It might be worth you checking that out, because for only $5 or $10 a month, you're going to be able to start learning this to safeguard yourself against these very things happening. And we are going to have a brief look in this video that explains it. But it is fascinating yet disturbing. And psychology now is becoming much more of a thing. It's even more relevant as well when you factor in that humans and machines are becoming closer bound. It's something you might want to pay attention to. It covers things as well that I will be going into, such as water cooler politics, in terms of the work ethos. That means people who gather around at lunchtime around the water cooler, the things that are said. You might want to start thinking about who's there and who's listening, because that can open you up potentially to a lot of problems. You see, in terms of this, there's a few interesting sort of prophecies on it. You've all heard of the term, the quieter you become, the more you're able to hear. Right? Well, that's what narcissists and sociopaths do. They'll listen and they'll be taking notes. Right? It's at that point, when they get something on you, that they can approach you and say, hey, look, I know this about you, I want you to do this for me. Or, I'm going to start coughing crap about you. At that point, you're now exploited. What happens if it means that the old tippy-tappy needs to be done? You don't know what that person's motives are. They could be an external threat actor, just internalized. You have no idea. You don't know. They could be even working for a rival company, but just managed to infiltrate. You don't know this. But all the warning signs are there when you start understanding narcissism, when you start understanding sociopathy, what happens in the workplace. Like people who go around rumour spreading. Okay? It all has its function, and it's all down to what's going on in that mind. Because that brain has its own agenda and what it's trying to achieve. You see? And it's that poses a real significant problem. On the Patreon side of it, I'm going to go into how that happens, how it's done, how the exploits happen, how humans are manipulated, how to do it, how to safeguard against it. It will be made available here as well on mainstream YouTube, but not for a period of time. I believe it's time to start actually earning some revenue on this one, I think. Getting people behind that, so that can enable me to hopefully write the white papers and get this stuff publicised. That's the point. But we are indeed going to have a look at a couple of hypothetical studies on this one that I sort of know is going on. Now, another thing that you would have heard as well is about leaving your home affairs on your doorstep when you go to work. Yeah, now's a good time to start doing that. Don't be discussing your home environment at work. Bottom line, because of this very risk, all right, threat actor within inside an organisation or business, or even who you work with, could be setting you up. All right, could very well do. If, say, for argument's sake, they see you as a problem or a threat to a promotion. If you want really a fantastic example of that, you've all seen the game show, The Weakest Link, where you have a whole team of people, but yeah, even the weakest people will start voting out the strongest ones. That's because in their mind, they want to get there at your expense. What happens when they turn their eyes to your infrastructure? Okay, who else now is going to be affected by that mindset? Who? You're not going to affect me, so don't worry. But that's the point, all right? That mind will have its own agenda. And narcissism's a big thing in this day and age. Right. Now, I forget exactly what the statistics are on it. It's either 1 in 100 or 1 in 50. Which is it? It's something like 1 in 100 people within an organisation turn out to be psychopaths. Is it about 1 in 25 socios? Something like that, isn't it? Virtually everybody nowadays is a narcissist. I think even he would agree with that. And this is the problem. Alright. I've got something here for you. Okay. This is where it becomes relevant. Not very well drawn out, but we'll have a quick look. The toxic employee or individual within an organisation with 2 departments could start digging up dirt on a couple of people if they know that a promotion's going on. Very much like the whole weakest link strategy. The threat actor would start gathering information about these people and to become exploitable. Right? The threat actor might have been denied a promotion before. Okay? Now it's not going to suit that threat actor, is it, to go exfiltrating data or information. So what they will do, using their narcissism or sociopathy in this case, they'll affect other people. And you see, this person here is sending data out, doing the dirty work for this guy, whether or not they're complicit in it, or whether or not they're essentially hostage to it, at that point is largely irrelevant. Point is, from within the organisation, that data is now being leaked. And nowhere really covers this. It's not covered in any of the formal exams. So let's just say then our sociopath or narcissist starts climbing up. Okay, so you see where they're going. They might make a sideways move to a different department. Now they've compromised another set of people and exfiltrating data there. That now means narcissists can start to threaten the people above them, saying, well, I've got this. Be complicit or else. At this point, now you have a serious situation. Right? Nowhere within pen testing is that actually covered. It's not. It's not covered. The implications for this are serious. Okay, very serious indeed. If data leaks get out and it affects the public, sorry, I'll just get another beer, then the Information Commissioner's Office has to be certainly notified. Alright? They would have to be. Almost certainly a business insurer would have to get involved. This is going to start costing money. Alright, so this now seriously becomes a problem. Meanwhile, internal employees not only now have discomfort, but their private and personal security is now breached. But yet, nowhere is this covered. Nowhere. Any of these books, it's not covered. It's not covered in the BTEC NDITP. It's not covered in the CISSP. It's not covered in the CEH. How, in most aspects of business management, it's not covered. Many aspects of systems analysis is not covered. And the question is why? Why is this not covered? What are we going to do to address this? All right. Human resources, they're not going to undertake these psychological assessments for the main part. Why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing rolling assessments on this? To find out who is toxic and who isn't. Why is it that only until the problem is established and only until the damage is done that things get highlighted? Why is that? Because my job certainly is to secure data and information. That's what a pen tester does. Right? That's what a certified ethical hacker does. They find the exploits in the system and then patch it. That's the whole idea behind it, to stop it happening. But it's not working in the industry, is it? Because internal data leaks happen all the time. It comes down to that psychology of who you're hiring. You see? Like we said, each one of these has its own agenda. How do we get that in check? How do we stop that problem happening? before it gets to that stage where these things happen. Like we said about water cooler politics, people gathering around the water coolers. What do? Take away all the water coolers and then demoralise everybody else. This isn't going to work. You see, no amount of open space, sort of open office environments, no amount of pool tables, no amount of coffee machines is going to cure it. Especially when Headcase here was denied a promotion. Okay, how do you deal with this? Now Headcase has it in for the company. But the sociopath, the psycho, the narcissist doesn't want to take the fall for it. They want that promotional spot. So Headcase will start trying to dig up dirt. That's where it does become my problem. That's where it does become my problem. Headcase might be telling other people to start messing with my systems. Alright? That could be done internally. Let's just quickly come back to the Hacker's Playbook for a second. Just because I'm waiting for my CEH 11 books to come through and the CISSP stuff to come through. That's an interesting point, because I am a man of action. These things will be delivered in a matter of days. But anyway, and anywho, let's get to the point. With regards to the social engineering, okay, it isn't discussed. Okay, these things could be set up by flying monkeys. Internal threat actors, not just external. We all know about the dangers of opening, should we say, unsolicited attachments in emails. What happens if your internal employee is influenced by Headcase here to do it? Who do you blame? Right? Who do you go for? Do you go for the person who opened it? Or do you go for Headcase here? And how do you prove it? This is the problem. And it isn't covered. The human element isn't covered. The whole office politics thing becomes a thing. It is a thing. And that's going to be interesting moving forward, with particularly what's gone on with the economy, with what's going on socially, with things like social media, with people becoming heavily narcissistic and having the time to watch things like The Weakest Link. Becomes a thing. On this note, feast your eyes back to 2011. There's a great documentary that was made called I Am Fishhead. You can find it. If not, I will try to find a way of reposting it. It's fantastic. It covers this very thing. It's fascinating. But yet, somehow, disturbing. Right? It is because you start to see the narcissistic traits and the sociopathic and psychopathic traits that a lot of people have, and what they will do to get to where they want to be at the expense of other people. But yet again, this isn't discussed in the realm of ethical hacking, pen testing, and business management. And it's one of those. I'm going to address that on my courses. So between like $5 and $10 a month. Get subscrizzled on that, and you'll learn how it's all done and how to combat it. And it'll all tie up together. Might be worth you checking that one out, I would say. But it's disturbing because it isn't covered. Most employers don't know about this. Now, can you imagine the damage that gets done? Not only does it demoralise the workplace and your environment, but it poses a huge risk. Especially even if you're a business owner or a manager, and now you have Headcase here going out looking for dirt and information on you. So Headcase Goofball here is going to do what it takes. And it's even worse when you consider that a lot of spying techniques can be done just by simply watching YouTube videos. And even going on to places such as Amazon, eBay, and a lot of these foreign marketplaces and buying spy gear. That falls into the hands of a narcissist or a socio. Now you've got real problems. But again, this isn't covered. It isn't covered in cybersecurity. It isn't covered in any aspect of ethical hacking, blue teams. Hell, business management doesn't cover it for the main part. But yet, the stupid irony is, a lot of the terminology is that. It just makes your head spin when you look at it. Really does. And there was you just thinking I was some sort of sneaky guy that only knows about electronics and computers, networks, and software. Think of what I say as the software to your hardware. You need the element of both. But there's the human element to consider. Better think about that one. The person you give information to today might be the person you regret tomorrow. Leave your personal shit at home. Leave it at home. Even the name of your dog. Don't take it to work. Seriously. If a socio or a narco gets hold of it, it will be used. Anything they dig up on you will be used at some point. That's a matter of fact. If they go digging and they find information about you, they'll either threaten to leak it, or they'll use you and your name to do what it takes to get themselves above you. No holds barred in this day and age, when everyone's competing for the same results. That's an element that cybersecurity and businesses don't take into consideration. Seriously. I'm raising the alarm bells on it. And like I said, this is previously undiscussed. Nobody's dared cross that line until now. 20 years of knowledge. At least 15 years of experience within the industries that I work in. And it's never discussed. Why? You see, because this is another interesting point about that. No amount of credit check, no amount of CRB or criminal checks will uncover the psycho mind. Won't do it. It's only if they've ever come to attention that it's ever discovered. It's interesting, isn't it? Think about that one. Who do you work with? What do they know? Are they willing to use that against you? It's something that needs to be looked at. Are they actually able to get you to carry out their work at your expense? To use you in a way as a bot? All puns intended. Think about that one. It works in the machine industry, doesn't it? You infect a computer and you zombify that. Okay. Right? You infect a bunch of computers to attack one node. It could be for the purpose of a denial of service or distributed denial of service. What happens when Goofball here decides to do it internally? Then what? Quiet hush hush could be done by rumour spreading. It creates a toxic and scared environment. People become more complicit, don't they? Because they don't want it done about them, so then they become, should we say, willing participants of it. And I've been on the rotten end of that myself. I just know how to deal with it. It's a very, very interesting point. And it should be covered, but it isn't. Not in any major capacity, but it's a serious security threat. Pretty much to, well, all companies, all businesses, and even your own home family environment. Somebody could easily start poking holes in your structure. Easy to do. It's done from the inside. And as I've already said, a lot of the social engineering toolkits and a lot of hackers kits that are featured in these books, yes, they're commercially available. What about the ones that are not? How do you safeguard against that? Well, like I said, best you get down in that comment section, best you get on that Patreon then, isn't it? Because I'm going to tell you what to look for, how to spot this, and how to nip it in the bud before you end up with real problems. Because you don't want it. At the very minimum, you have an unhappy workforce. At the worst case, there's a business, there's an insurance claim on the business, especially if there's data leaks. Information Commissioner's Office has to get involved. Police have to get involved. Insurers. It becomes a nightmare. It's about time we deal with this. Like I said, go check it out. Get on Patreon. Because a lot of these videos are going to be going up on that easily a month or two before they come public on YouTube. I strongly suggest you do. even from a personal perspective, I would. You'll learn about narcissism. You'll learn about people that will use that, how they'll manipulate information, how they'll manipulate data to suit their objectives, why they do it, how they do it, how you mitigate against it, and how you can actually control that mind to stop it happening. Because mitigation after the fact isn't good enough. It's just not good enough in this day and age. And this is the final point that does get my gripe. When it comes to certainly the exfiltration of information and data, and when it comes to risk assessment, it's always done on the likelihood of it happening and the effect it will have. But that's only in terms of the, should we say, the hardware. It's never done from this. Compromise that. It doesn't matter how much you spend on your infrastructure. When you have sick employees and ones who will manipulate others from the inside and the out, it doesn't matter anymore, does it? Like we said, at very minimum, it upsets the workforce. It upsets your business and it'll upset your customers. At the worst case, shut down. It's as simple as that. Check out the links. Check out the information. I'm going to be up on Patreon, uploading on there very shortly. Get on there, go check it out. Until then, you better stay safe and think about who and what's around you. Okay? We need to lock things down nice and tight. Tight. That's tighter than a duck's backside kind of tight. Airtight. Right? That's what we do as security professionals. Get it locked down. Keep it safe, keep locked, keep real, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. See you soon.